I think one scene in A Portrait of a Lady on Fire has become one of my all-time favorites. Every time I watch it, I just sit there utterly transfixed, completely engaged on both the conceptual and emotional level, but it might not be the scene you're thinking of. Yes, my favorite scene in A Portrait of a Lady on Fire is the last scene in the movie, the slow 2 minute and 26-second zoom in on one of the main characters' faces, set to the third movement of Vivaldi's Summer. Nevertheless, when I get to this ending, I sit there in silence and I never get bored. I end up not just thinking about what I have experienced during the film, but just feeling a certain way. I'm not really sure how to describe it, however, the emotional impact it has on me is profound. And I know this because I always end up thinking about this scene even when I'm not watching the movie. This got me thinking about other moments in movies where I've had a similar experience, where in a non-musical film I've had a musical experience. Specifically, an experience that reminded me of attending an orchestra concert. The first place I went was Disney's 1940 classic Fantasia. In a literal sense, Fantasia is like a live orchestra experience. There is really not a narrative. Instead, it is more like a programmed series of different musical pieces, of course with animation set to it. YouTuber Sideways in his video essay Why I Love Fantasia helps get into picture this kind of musical experience. He has two main points that he addresses in his video. First is how animation or visual elements in Fantasia is secondary to the music. In other words, the music drives the filmic elements. Second, he discusses the differences between absolute and program music. Program music exists to tell a story. In Fantasia, this is the Sorcerer's Apprentice, which was written and expressed in the film as a story told through music. In other words, the music refers to something, usually a story, but it could also be a place or person. Absolute music, on the other hand, exists just to be music. Whereas The Sorcerer's Apprentice was shown as a story with Mickey Mouse, the absolute music of Toccata and Fugue in D minor is shown first as watching an orchestra and then as an abstract, arguably emotionally driven series of animation. I think that these 2 points that Sideways makes are key to understanding the type of experience I had in A Portrait of a Lady on Fire and even in Fantasia. I would argue that these musical moments, specifically concert experiences, in non-musical movies function to give the audience an abstract musical experience, an experience that is musically driven in contrast to the program music in the score, and crucially is subjective and emotionally engaging. To try to explain what I mean, let's take a look at the final scene of Fantastic Woman where the lead woman gives an opera performance to a crowd in a concert hall. Like A Portrait of a Lady on Fire, the scene is comprised of a single long shot that slowly zooms in and ends on a close-up of a character's face. However, the framing at the start of both scenes communicates that the shot takes place from the point of view of an audience. The mise-en-scène in A Fantastic Woman is working to replicate an actual stage and how people would exist there. This effect works to justify the music in both scenes as something diegetically taking place in the world. This diegesis is necessary for this kind of non-musical film to give a sense of verisimilitude. Nevertheless, it is clear that these filmic elements are secondary to the music and soundtrack, where the shot is relatively static and the presentation is cut and dry. This final scene of A Fantastic Woman carries the emotional complexity of the film and the main character who is singing. The scene is guided less by what the filmmakers are doing and rather by the experience the viewer is having with the music in the final emotional context of the film. This is why I argue that these moments are absolute moments because, like the abstract experience of Toccata and Fugue in D minor, the kind of experience one has is more abstract, free, and self-guided, replicating an experience one might have with live music, and specifically live orchestrated music. This stands in contrast to the score, which functions like program music, where it tells a specific story and is secondary to the filmic elements towards the end of giving the viewer a specific experience. In other words, these kind of concert scenes communicated through a variety of formal elements are a way of telling the viewer, even when the music is not itself absolute, to have an absolute musical experience in relation to the rest of the film and its soundtrack. Adrian McLean, in his essay, And Only That I Do What I Love and Love What I Do, Film Noir and the Musical Woman, he discusses the role musical numbers play in film noir, a non-musical genre. He comes to the understanding that while musical numbers, like the ones we have seen, cause ruptures in the narrative, they are nonetheless places where action can occur. McLean mainly focuses on how this complicates or simplifies the woman or the showgirl archetype in noir films. However, he writes, although we lack a precise theoretical terminology with which to describe the way music and musical numbers function outside the musical genre, it is clear that such numbers can say things which, in effect, the narrative often cannot. For me, musical numbers are able to tap into our emotions. They create a tool to add subjectivity to an extremely objective medium. What these moments can say and how they can contribute to film is extremely powerful, even if we don't really have a good way of talking about this, as McLean suggests. But every time I encounter one of these moments, I am reminded why I love film. Thank you for watching.